Hello, welcome to our edition of Real Numbers Part 2. This is where we throw in variables and make it even more fun. See, that's why we've got the fun stuff. Alright, let's go on. What we're going to do is we're going to evaluate e plus m, and those are the letters I picked because that's my name and my wife's name. I'm like a high school kid. I like to write e plus m, and that means that we're in love. Alright, anyway, we're adding e plus m. And e is the value of 22.6 and m is the value of negative 42.8. So basically, what we're writing is 22.6 plus negative 42.8. Okay? That's e plus m. Alright? And as we looked at yesterday, we see that these two values are different. Alright, and the greater value is negative. So we're going to end up with a negative value, and we'll take the greater absolute value, which is negative 42.8, and we will subtract the smaller absolute value, which is 22.6, for our final result. Okay? Alright, and to do that, we'll first take the absolute value of each of those, which is negative, or I guess we'll end up with positive 8, but negative overall, and 22.6. So now we have a more simplified question. We can just do 42.8 minus 22.6, which will give us the result of 20.2, and we can simply write that as negative 20.2 when we distribute that negative into the parentheses there. Okay, so when we find out our 22.6 plus negative 42.8, our final result is negative 20.2. Okay, and essentially this is the same as what we were doing last time, only we have the variables e and m, and we're actually plugging in numbers e plus m, so 22.6 plus negative 42.8. For the next one, it's s and j, and s is my brother and j is his wife, and they're in love too, so they could write s plus j on stuff. Anyway, I know it's a little cheesy. Alright. S plus j. So I'm going to substitute in those values, negative 26.4. And by the way, these aren't birth dates or anything. I'm not that coordinated. They were just random numbers. Alright. So 26.4 is negative, and the positive is plus 16.3. Alright, now looking at these two numbers, we can say, again, the greater absolute value is 26.4. Okay, so that means that the total is going to have that sign there, so it will be a negative sign. Alright, if the greater absolute value were positive, it would have a positive sign at the end. But we're giving it a negative sign because that's what we're required to do. Negative 26.4 minus the absolute value of the smaller of the two, which is 16.3. And of course I missed. There. Alright. So there's what we have. We take the absolute value of the larger absolute values, and we subtract the absolute value of the smaller of the two absolute values, which is 16.3, smaller than 26, and the overall result will end up being negative because the larger of the two is negative. So 26.4 minus 16.3, 26.4 minus 16.3. At this point, you can write it down if you'd like, or you can plug it into a calculator and see what the result is. Either way is fine. But what we end up with is negative 10.1, negative 10.1, and we distribute that negative sign, and we'll end up with the result of negative 10.1. Okay? So there is the final answer for that question. For this question, which is pretty much one of the last question we're doing today, what I'm doing is I actually took a question from the textbook, page 79, and I wrote down the question. We're actually going to solve it together. And this is the question. The Empire State Building in New York City is 1,454 feet tall. The observatory on the 86th floor is 404 feet from the top of the building. How high is the observatory from the ground? Follow-up question. Can Superman jump that high? Okay, it's a very important question. Okay, I added the follow-up question, of course. Hey. Anyway, so we're going to start off with the first question. The Empire State Building in New York is 1,454 feet tall. What I like to do is to draw out this stuff. All right, there we go, New York City. Okay, there's a little taxi cab. We could have made them yellow, but I think we get the point across here. Here are some buildings, and this big beast is the Empire State Building. Okay, it's got the point on top. It's the one that King Kong climbs up, right? Okay, Empire State Building. It is 1,454 feet tall, so we can kind of label that, if we'd like, right up here at the top. 1,454 feet. Okay, now that negative there is not really a negative. It's just to say that that point, the highest point there. Okay, so I'll actually get rid of it just to avoid any confusion here. But this point here, 1,454 feet tall. Now, it says that the observatory is on the 86th floor. It's 404 feet from the top of the building. So if we go down the distance of 404 feet, that's what we've got. Now, how high is this observatory from the ground? So, all right, there's my question mark. So we know that this is 1,454 feet from the top, or to the top, from the top all the way to the ground. We know that this is 400 feet from here to here, and so what they're asking us to do is to find this question mark here. All right, how long is it from the top or from the ground to there? Okay, and we can do this in one of two ways. One, we could say the total distance of 1,454 minus 404 feet, right, because we're subtracting. Or we can also write this as 1,454 feet plus negative 404 feet, right? Because we are going backwards. So that's the way we're going to do it, because this is a lesson on adding negatives. So I'm going to do it that way. All right. And this is a good way for us to see this side of the coin here, because we haven't done any questions like this yet. And all the ones we've done so far, the negative number has been larger absolute value, right? In this case, the larger absolute value is 1,454. So we're going to get a positive result. And basically the way you do this, when you get a question like this, is that you'll just eliminate the parentheses, get rid of that plus sign. Okay? So 1,454 minus 404, and our result should be 1,050, if my math is correct, and it usually pretty close to always sometimes is. Aha! I check with the calculator though, just in case. All right, so that is our final footage off the ground, and of course, our follow-up question, can Superman jump this high? And of course the answer to that is yes, because he can leap over a tall building in a single bound. So of course he can jump this high. All right, Superman wins, and we've got the answer to our question. Okay, so I find that drawing a picture helps. You don't have to draw the taxi cab or the other buildings, but drawing a picture sometimes helps us to identify what it is that we're looking for. Okay, so even though it's a silly picture, it is helpful, I think. And you don't usually have to answer follow-up questions, but I like to do that too. So now we're on to the properties. I wanted to go over a little bit of the properties from page 79. And the first property is the additive inverse property. That's saying a plus negative a is equal to 0. In other words, 2 plus negative 2 is equal to 0. On a number line, that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, because if this is 0 here in the middle, and we have a negative number here, like negative 5, right? We would say negative 5 plus 5 equals 0, right? Or we'd go the opposite direction. 5 plus negative 5 would be equal to 0. Okay? So this is just showing us, this is one of the properties, that if you have a number and you add its opposite, you will always get 0. And that just makes sense. 4 minus 4, 0. 3 minus 3, 0. Right? 2 plus negative 2, 0. So that's the additive inverse property. Then there's the identity property. This one here is a little bit different. It says a number plus 0 is always going to give you that number. So 2 plus 0 will always give you 2. Also, 3 plus 0 will always give you 3, and 4 plus 0 will always give you 4. And no matter what number you have, if you add a 0, you get that number. Okay, positive, negative, it doesn't matter. Okay, that is called the identity property. It helps you identify that number. And the last property that we're going to look at here is for all real numbers a and b, so two numbers, the opposite of the sum of those two numbers is equal to the sum of the opposite of those numbers. Ooh, that one's a little more complicated. But what it means is this, is that if you have the negative on the outside of the parentheses for these two numbers, it's the same as adding the opposite of both of those numbers. Okay? So for example, I do a little example here. If your numbers are 1 and 2, okay, the negative value of 1 plus 2 is the same thing as saying negative 1 plus negative 2. All right? And you see that that's the case here. We add 1 and 2 is 3. We add negative 1 and negative 2, we get negative 3. Right? And so you'll see that that's true in all cases. So if you have something like this, a negative on the outside of two numbers, it's the same thing as saying the negative of each of those numbers added together. And we'll see this property used more and more. And once you use it, it'll make a little more sense. But I just wanted to go over those properties from page 79 so you had them kind of explained somewhere, as well as seeing them in this form. It just seemed like it was a little complicated. Again, if you've got questions about this, go talk to your teacher. Go to office hours, ask your teacher, send them a K-mail, whichever you'd like, and they can explain that one a little bit more. But you'll see it more and more as we go along. So that's it. We did it. We made it to the end of the lesson. Now it's your turn. Go and do the textbook work. Take the quiz. Have a wonderful day. Bye.